Hello everyone, and welcome to the DXD Tales. So we are back with an interesting movie on what if Issei awakened the primordial power of nothingness. Issei x Rias Gremory x Serafall Leviathan. But before we start, I just want to remind you to please subscribe to my channel and hit the like button if you enjoy my content. Let's start the story. Chapter 1. The Awakening Void. The first sign that something was wrong came when Issei Hyodo's alarm clock disappeared. One moment it sat on his nightstand, shrieking its digital wake-up call. The next, his Han D passed through empty space where solid plastic had been. No sound, no flash of light, just absence where presence had been. Issei blinked sleep from his eyes and stared at the vacant spot. What the hell? He rubbed his fingers together, feeling an odd tingling sensation like static electricity but colder. The sensation faded as quickly as it had appeared, leaving only confusion and the faint impression that something fundamental had shifted in the universe. Sunlight streamed through his bedroom window, illuminating dancing dust motes. Ordinary, normal, except for the missing alarm clock. Had he knocked it off in his sleep? A quick check under the bed and behind the nightstand revealed nothing. His phone vibrated with a message from Rias, meeting at the old school building. Don't be late, right, devil business. Being recently reincarnated as a devil in Rias Gremory's peerage still felt surreal, but considerably less surreal than vanishing alarm clocks. 3 weeks had passed. CNCE, the crimson-haired beauty, had saved his life and bound him to her service, revealing a hidden world of supernatural beings existing alongside humanity. Issei dressed quickly, pushing the strange incident from his mind. Probably just misplaced it. The alternative, that he had somehow erased an object from existence, seemed ridiculous even in his new reality of devils, angels, and sacred gears. The walk to Kuo University was pleasant enough, cherry blossoms swirling in the spring breeze. He'd graduated from the academy and started university, though in reality, most of his education now came from Rias and her peerage teaching him about devil society. At 20, he was finally developing a more mature outlook on life, though certain perverted tendencies remained stubbornly ingrained. Issei Senpai, Gaspar Vladi, the reclusive half-vampire, waved from beneath a tree, his feminine features framed by blonde hair. Despite being older, the Dhampir still called Issei Senpai from their academy days. Morning, Gaspar. Rias called a meeting. Yes. Gaspar fell into step beside him. Something about strange energy readings around Kuo. Akano-san is concerned. Issei nodded, suppressing a yawn. Any idea what kind of readings? Nothing familiar. Kaneko said it smells like. Gaspar paused, his crimson eyes troubled. Like nothing. Nothing has a smell. That's just it. It's the absence of smell. Like a hole in reality. Something cold settled in Issei's stomach as he remembered his missing alarm clock. Coincidence, surely. The old school building loomed ahead, preserve. As devil territory despite the club technically disbanding after graduation. Rias had convinced the university administration to maintain it as a historical site, with a generous donation from the Gremory family. Inside, the familiar faces of Rias's peerage waited. Akano Himahima with her elegant ponytail and teasing smile, Kaneko Tuju perched on the sofa eating sweets, Kiba Yudo leaning against the wall with casual grace. Asia Argento arranging teacups with meticulous care, and Zenobia Quarta studying devil language texts with intense concentration. And at the center of it all, Rias Gremory herself, crimson hair cascading down her back, intelligent blue-green eyes surveying her peerage. When those eyes landed on Issei, they softened almost imperceptibly. You're late, she said. But there was no real reproach in her tone. Sorry. Had a weird morning. He decided not to mention the alarm clock yet. Gaspar mentioned something about energy readings. Akano stepped forward, ummaning a magical circle that projected a map of Kuo. Several points pulsed with dark energy. We've detected anomalies throughout the city, she explained, her normally playful voice serious. They appear randomly, last for a few minutes, then vanish. During these events, magical energy in the vicinity simply disappears. Kaneko's golden eyes narrowed. It feels wrong. Empty. Could it be a sacred gear user? Kiba suggested. Rias shook her head. No sacred gear in our records can create these effects. Even dimension-altering ones like Gaspar's leave magical signatures. These anomalies leave nothing, not even residual energy. Issei's mind flashed to his missing alarm clock again. The timing seemed too coincidental, but how could he possibly cause magical anomalies? His sacred gear, boosted gear, contained the Welsh dragon Didraig, powerful, certainly, but not known for making things vanish. Rias continued, we need to investigate each location. Akino and I will take the shrine area. Hiba and Kaneko, check the commercial district. Asia and Xenovia, the residential neighborhoods. Gasper and Issei, the university grounds. Issei nodded, relieved to be paired with Gasper. Dampier's time-stopping ability could prove useful if they encountered something dangerous, and his shy demeanor made him an undemanding partner. As the meeting dispersed, Rias caught Issei's arm. Be careful, she said quietly. These anomalies, they feel ancient. Older than devil kind. Her concern warmed him. Their relationship had evolved since his reincarnation, from master and servant to something more complex. Not quite lovers, but more than friends. The tension between them remained unresolved, both hesitant to cross that final line. We'll be fine, he assured her. Boosted gear gives me an edge against most threats. Quote, something flickered in her eyes, doubt, worry. She squeezed his arm once before letting go. Check in every hour. University grounds were busy with students hurrying between classes. Issei and Gasper walked casually, extending their supernatural senses to detect any disturbances. I'm surprised Bushu paired us together, Gasper said, using the old nickname for Rias. Usually she keeps you closer. Issei shrugged. Maybe she thought the campus would be safest. Or maybe she knows something we don't. They checked the library first. Nothing unusual. Among the stacks of books and studying students, the science building yielded similar results, as did the humanities department and student center. Let's try the athletic fields, Issei suggested after an hour of fruitless searching. The vast green expanse of the soccer field stretched before them, empty during class hours. As they crossed the halfway line, Issei felt a strange prickling sensation at the back of his neck. The air seemed to thicken, as if reality itself had become more dense. Gasper, do you feel that? The Dampier nodded, eyes wide with alarm. Something's coming. The sensation intensified. Issei activated boosted gear, the red gauntlet materializing over his left arm with a flash of emerald light. Partner, something's interfering with my energy. Didraig's voice resonated in Issei's mind, uncharacteristically concerned. Before Issei could respond, a rift opened in the air before them. Not the familiar magical circles of devil transportation, but a jagged tear in reality itself. Through it stepped three figures in hooded black robes adorned with silver symbols Issei didn't recognize. Target confirmed, said the tallest figure, voice distorted as if speaking through water. The dragon vessel. Gasper stepped back. Issei-senpai, they don't feel like devils or angels or fallen ones. I can't sense what they are. Issei moved protectively in front of his friend. Who are you? What do you want? The leader pulled back their hood, revealing a woman's face, ageless, with silver hair and eyes that reflected no light. We are the Null Conclave. We've come to test the Void Inheritor. The what? Instead of answering, she raised her hand. The air around Issei and Gasper shimmered, forming a barrier that cut them off from the rest of the campus. Gasper, call Rias, Issei shouted as the three assailants spread out to surround them. Boost. Didraig's voice announced as the gauntlet glowed, doubling Issei's power. Gasper fumbled for his phone. But the smallest of the robed figures flicked a finger, and the device crumbled to dust. No outside interference, the figure said, voice high and childlike despite the menacing tone. This is between us and the Inheritor. Issei shifted into a fighting stance. I don't know what you're talking about, but attacking members of the Gremory household is a big mistake. Boost. The third figure, broad-shouldered and silent, thrust both hands forward. Shadows coalesced into spears that hurtled toward Issei and Gasper. Gasper, now, Issei called. The Dampier's eyes glowed crimson as he activated his sacred gear. Forbidden Blur View. The shadow spears froze in midair as time stopped for them. Issei charged the broad-shouldered attacker, gauntleted fist pulled back. Boost. Power Surge. Ed threw him as he closed the distance. But as he swung, the attacker dissolved into black mist, reforming behind him. Cold fingers closed around Issei's throat, lifting him off the ground. Pathetic, the attacker rumbled. The Void Inheritor can't even access his true power. Gasper's frightened cry cut through the air as the woman pinned him with bands of silvery energy. Issei senpai. Rage and desperation flooded Issei. He clawed at the hand around his throat, lungs burning for air. Partner, something's happening to your energy. Diedrag's alarmed voice echoed in his mind. The tingling sensation from that morning returned, spreading from Issei's fingers up his arm. The world seemed to blur at the edges, colors bleeding into one another. His vision tunneled, darkness encroaching from the periphery. There it is, the woman whispered, silver eyes widening. The awakening. The hand around Issei's throat suddenly vanished, not loosened, but completely disappeared. The attack. Startled expression was the last thing Issei saw before the man's entire body winked out of existence like a snuffed candle. No blood, no ash, no trace remained. Issei dropped to his knees, gasping for air. The remaining attackers stepped back, the childlike one releasing a high, delighted laugh. It's true. The primordial nothingness awakens. The woman's face showed reverent awe. The prophecy fulfilled. The void returns. Issei staggered to his feet, the strange energy still coursing through him. His left hand, the one not covered by boosted gear, now trailed wisps of absolute darkness, like ink in water. Where these tendrils touched the ground, the grass simply ceased to exist, leaving perfectly circular holes in the earth. What's happening to me? Panic edged his voice. Partner, this power, it's suppressing even my energy. I've never felt anything like it. The woman bowed, an incongruously respectful gesture from someone who had attacked them moments before. You are awakening to your true nature. Void Inheritor. The power of primordial nothingness that existed before creation itself. I don't understand. You will. She straightened. The Null Conclave has waited centuries for your emergence. When you're ready to learn the truth about what you are, seek the place where nothing dwells within something. With those cryptic words, she opened another rift. She and the childlike figure stepped through, the tear sealing behind them with a sound like reality sighing. Gasper rushed to Issei's side, crimson eyes wide with concern and fear. Issei senpai, your hand. The darkness around Issei's fingers was fading, the strange energy receding. He flexed his hand experimentally, feeling normal again except for the lingering cold sensation. What did I do to that guy? Gasper swallowed hard. You unmade him, not killed, erased, like he never existed at all. Horror washed through Issei. He had killed in battle before. Devils in service to Rias sometimes had to, but this was different. The absolute finality of it, the complete erasure of another being, shook him to his core. We need to tell Bushu, Gasper said, helping Issei up. They made their way back to the old school building in silence, Issei wrestling with the implications of what had happened. Power of nothingness, void inheritor, none of it made sense. His identity had always been clear, human turned devil, wielder of boosted gear, pawn in Rias Gremory's peerage. Now that identity seemed suddenly uncertain. The others had already returned from their investigations when Issei and Gasper arrived. One look at their faces, and Rias was on her feet. What happened? Her voice was sharp with concern. Gasper explained while Issei sank into a chair, still processing. With each detail of the encounter, the expressions around the room grew more grave. You made someone disappear? Akino asked, violet eyes serious. Completely. Issei nodded mutely. Rias paced, brow furrowed in thought. The Null Conclave. I've never heard of them. And this talk of primordial nothingness. I have, Kaneko said quietly. All eyes turned to her. The petite Nekomata rarely volunteered information. My sister once mentioned beings that worship the void between worlds. Said they were dangerous fanatics even the underworld avoided. Your sister, Kuroka? Rias asked. Kaneko nodded, discomfort evident at mentioning her estranged sister. She said they believe in something that existed before creation. Before devils or angels or gods. Kiba frowned. That's heretical even by devil standards. But what does it have to do with Issei? Asia asked, her gentle face creased with worry. Rias stopped pacing and knelt before Issei, taking his hands in hers. Have you noticed anything strange lately? Before today, quote, the tenderness in her touch steadied him. My alarm clock disappeared this morning. Just vanished when I reached for it. I thought I was seeing things. Her eyes widened slightly. And you didn't think to mention this. It seemed trivial compared to mysterious energy readings. Nothing is trivial when it comes to you, she said softly, then caught herself and added more professionally. To members of my peerage. She's right, partner, Diedrag interjected. This power interfered with my energy. That shouldn't be possible for anything less than God-class beings. Issei repeated Diedrag's observation aloud. Akeno approached with a silver pendant. May I scan your magical signature? It might help us understand what's happening. Issei nodded. She held the pendant over him. And it began to glow, then abruptly went dark. Akeno blinked in surprise. The magic in the pendant is gone. Not depleted. Gone. As if it never existed. That's what happened to that attacker. Gasper said. Like he was erased from reality. A heavy silence fell over the room. Issei looked down at his hands. Ordinary hands that had apparently just unmade a magical object and, earlier, an entire person. What am I becoming? He whispered. Rias squeezed his hands. We'll figure this out. Together. Her voice held absolute conviction, and Issei felt a surge of gratitude for her unwavering support. Zenobia, practical as always, spoke up. We should contact Serzek-sama. If Issei possesses a power unknown even to devils, the mouse should be informed. Rias nodded reluctantly. You're right. I'll contact my brother. She turned to Issei again. But first, we need to make sure you're safe. If these Null Conclave people found you once, they might return. They said they've been waiting for me, Issei recalled. Called me the Void Inheritor, like I'm some chosen one in a fantasy novel. Chosen by what? Kiba wondered. No one had an answer. Rias created a communication circle. The magic glowing crimson in the air. I'll request an audience with Oni-sama immediately. Akeno, prepare a containment barrier around the building, strongest protections we can manage. Yes, Rias. Quote, the rest of you, research everything you can find about primordial powers and this Null Conclave. Ancient texts, underworld records, anything. Everyone moved with purpose, the seriousness of the situation evident. Issei watched them, a knot forming in his stomach. Once again, he was causing problems for everyone, but this time, it wasn't because of boosted gear or dragon powers. This was something else entirely, something apparently even more dangerous. Partner, Diedrag's voice was uncharacteristically hesitant. There are legends even among dragons. Tales of what existed before the god of the Bible created the current world. What kind of legends? Issei thought back. Not pleasant ones. The void that preceded creation wasn't just empty space. Some believe it had will, purpose. Dragons are beings of immense magical energy, so we've always stood in opposition to nothingness. Are you saying there's some ancient void entity using me? Asterisk. I don't know. But if the power of primordial nothingness is awakening within you, we're in uncharted territory. Even I, who has lived for millennia, have never witnessed such a thing. That was far from reassuring. The communication circle flared, and Serzek's Lucifer's face appeared, handsome features set in an expression of polite inquiry. Rias, this is unexpected. Oni-sama, we have a situation. Rias outlined the events briefly and succinctly. With each word, Serzek's expression grew more serious. By the end, all trace of his usual affable demeanor had vanished. Keep Issei-kun isolated until I arrive. He instructed. I'll bring Ajuka. If anyone can understand this power, it's him. How soon can you come? Within the hour. And Rias, his voice softened slightly. Be careful. If this is what I suspect, all factions will take interest, and not all benevolently. The communication ended, leaving Rias looking troubled. All factions? Issei asked. Devils, angels, fallen angels, yokai, Norse, Hindu. Every pantheon and supernatural group, she explained. Powers that predate the current world order are politically sensitive. Great, Issei muttered. Just what I needed. Magical diplomatic incidents. Rias smiled faintly at his gallows humor. We'll handle it. We always do. Her confidence was catching. Despite everything, Issei felt a glimmer of hope. They had faced seemingly impossible situations before and prevailed. Akeno returned, elegant as always despite the strain of casting high-level barrier magic. Perimeter secured. Nothing gets in or out without our knowledge. Thank you, Akeno. Rias checked her watch. Oni-sama will be here soon. Until then. A tremendous crash from outside cut her off. The building shook, dust raining from the ceiling. Hiba was at the window instantly. Fallen angels. At least a dozen, attacking the barrier. What? Why would they? Rias began, but another impact interrupted her. Bushu. Kaneko called from another window. There's someone leading them. A man with multiple pairs of black wings. Issei joined her, peering out at their attackers. Leading the fallen angels was a tall figure with aristocratic features and 10 black wings spread wide, a high-ranking fallen angel, far stronger than those Issei had encountered before. Kokobile, Rias breathed, one of the leaders of Gregory. Quote, "Why is a leader of the fallen angels attacking us?" Asia asked, fear evident in her voice. He must have sensed the void energy, Akeno suggested. Fallen angels were once beings of light, they would be particularly sensitive to its opposite. Another blast hit the barrier, magical energy flaring as Akeno's protections held, barely. We can't wait for Oni-sama, Rias decided. We need to deal with this now. I'll go, Issei said. Standing. It's me they want. Rias caught his arm. Absolutely not. We face this together. The determination in her eyes brooked no argument. Issei nodded, feeling a surge of affection for this woman who repeatedly put herself in danger for her peerage, for him. Everyone, battle formations, Rias commanded. Gasper, stay back and be ready with your time stop if needed. Asia, focus on healing support. Everyone else, with me. They moved as a coordinated unit, exiting the building to face the attackers from within the protection of Akeno's barrier. Kokobile hovered above, 10 black wings beating slowly as he regarded them with contempt. Rias Gremory, he called down, voice carrying supernatural resonance. Hand over the void wielder, and we'll leave peacefully. Rias stepped forward, crimson magic swirling around her. You attack devil territory without provocation or declaration. Explain yourself, Kokobile. The fallen angel's smile was cold. Provocation. The emergence of a void wielder is provocation enough. Such power cannot be left in devil hands, especially not such young, inexperienced ones. Issei is my pawn, Rias stated firmly. Any issue with him is an issue with the Gremory clan. And by extension, with my brother, one of the 4 Mao, she added, letting the implicit threat hang in the air. Kokobile laughed, a harsh sound devoid of humor. Sear's doesn't concern me. The power your pawn demonstrated earlier today concerns me. The Null Conclave's movements concern me. His eyes fixed on Issei. Boy, do you even understand what you've awakened? The primordial void existed before angels fell, before devils were created, before God himself. It is the absence upon which presence was built. Pretty philosophy. Cal for someone launching a surprise attack, Issei called back. Impudent. Kokobile raised a hand, light coalescing into a massive spear. If you won't surrender willingly, I'll take you by force. The light spear crashed against Akeno's barrier, causing it to flicker dangerously. Boost. Didraig's voice announced as Issei prepared for battle. Hiba summoned a demonic sword, Zenobia drew Durandal, and Kaneko slipped on her combat gloves. Akeno transformed into her battle priestess attire, lightning crackling between her fingers. Rias's power of destruction swirled around her hands, crimson. An energy destructive enough to disintegrate matter. Fallen angels descended around Kokobile, each wielding light weapons of various forms. The barrier wouldn't last much longer under their combined assault. When it falls, scatter and regroup, Rias instructed quietly. Don't let them isolate Issei. Issei clenched his fists, feeling boosted gear's power flow through him, but beneath it, something colder stirred. The void energy from earlier whispered at the edges of his consciousness, offering power beyond what Didraig could provide. The barrier shattered with a sound like breaking glass. Immediately, the fallen angels attacked, light spears raining down from all directions. Now, Rias shouted. The peerage moved with practiced coordination. Hiba's incredible speed let him deflect multiple spears with his sword. Zenobia swung Durandal in wide arcs, the holy sword's massive power forcing attackers back. Kaneko used her rook's strength to hurl chunks of earth at airborne enemies. Ino's lightning struck fallen angels from the sky, while Rias's destruction magic disintegrated light weapons before they could reach their targets. Issei found himself back to back with Rias, facing 3 fallen angels who had singled him out. Boost, boost, boost. You're making a mistake, Issei told his attackers, dragon power surging through him. I don't even understand this void power myself. All the more reason to eliminate you, one replied, hurling a light spear. Issei dodged, the spear grazing his shoulder. Pain lanced through him. Light was especially damaging to devils. Behind him, he heard Rias engage another enemy, her destruction magic humming with deadly potential. Explosion. Boosted gear released its stored power, and Issei charged, faster and stronger than before. His gauntleted fist connected with a fallen angel's jaw, sending the enemy crashing to the ground. The other two attacked simultaneously from different angles. Issei couldn't dodge both. As a light dagger plunged toward his chest, that cold sensation returned, stronger, more insistent. Without conscious thought, his hand came up, trailing darkness. When the dagger touched the darkness, it vanished, not broken or deflected, but erased from existence. The fallen angel's momentum carried him forward into the void trailing from Issei's fingers. A look of absolute horror crossed the angel's face in the instant before he made contact. Then he was gone. Not just dead, but unmade, as if he had never existed. The third fallen angel froze, wings beating frantically as he tried to gain altitude, to escape. What are you? He gasped. Issei stared at his hand in shock. He hadn't meant to do that, had barely understood what was happening before it was over. A massive light spear pierced the ground between them. Kokobile descended slowly, eyes narrowed with interest. Fascinating, he murmured. You erased Calum completely. No corpse, no soul for judgment. Simply negated his existence. Battles raged around them, but Kokobile seemed unconcerned with the fighting. His focus remained entirely on Issei. Such power, he continued. It reminds me of stories from before the Great War. Tales of what existed in the time before time. Issei backed away, void energy still wisping from his fingers. I don't want to hurt anyone else. Call off your attack. Hurt. Kokobile laughed. Boy, what you did wasn't hurt, it was erasure. Far worse than death. A crimson blast of destruction magic forced Kokobile to dodge as Rias joined Issei's side. Enough philosophy, Kokobile, she snapped. Leave now, or face the consequences when my brother arrives. Something, uncertainty, flickered across the fallen angel's face. Serafall comes here personally. He's already on his way, Rias bluffed. Though Issei knew it wasn't entirely a bluff. Along with Ajuka Beelzebub, Kokobile assessed the battlefield. Several of his fallen angels had been defeated, while Rias's peerage remained standing despite injuries. The cost of continuing was becoming unreasonable, especially with Mao potentially arriving soon. This isn't over, he promised, rising into the air. The Void Wielder's emergence changes everything. All factions will be drawn to this power, and not all will be as restrained as have been today. He signaled to his remaining forces, who disengaged immediately. We will meet again, Void Wielder. Kokobile called down to Issei. When you better understand what you've become. With that, the fallen angels retreated, vanishing into magical transportation circles. As the adrenaline of battle faded, Issei looked around at his friends. Asia was already moving among them, her twilight healing treating injuries. Heba nursed a burned arm, Zenobia leaned heavily on Durandal, and Kaneko sat catching her breath. Akino knelt beside Gasper, who had overextended his sacred gear trying to freeze multiple opponents. Is everyone okay? Issei asked, guilt washing through him. All this because of a power he neither understood nor controlled. We'll live, Rias assured him, though her uniform was torn and a cut on her cheek still bled. But this confirms our worst fears. Your new power has attracted attention, dangerous attention. I didn't ask for this, Issei said quietly. Rias touched his face gently. None of us ask for the power we're born with. What matters is how we use it. Her touch anchored him, reminded him of who he was beyond this strange new ability. Not just a void wielder or inheritor or whatever these people called him, but Issei Hyodo, Rias's pawn, Didraig's partner. Member of a family that had formed around him. A massive transportation circle appeared in the courtyard, glowing with the distinctive magic of the Lucifer household. Fr. Omid emerged Searzek's Lucifer in formal attire, his crimson hair, so similar to his sister's, moving slightly in the magical current. Beside him stood Ajuka Beelzebub, his calculating eyes taking in the battlefield with scientific interest. And behind them, a figure Issei hadn't expected, Serafall Leviathan, another of the four Mao, dressed incongruously in her magical girl costume. Rias, Serafall greeted, concern evident in his voice as he noted her injuries. We felt the battle from the underworld. Kokobile. Yes, Oni-sama. He withdrew when I mentioned you were coming. Smart of him. Serafall turned to Issei. And you must be experiencing a very confusing day, Issei-kun. Despite the gravity of the situation, Issei couldn't help a weak smile. You could say that. Ajuka approached, studying Issei with the intensity of a scientist examining a fascinating specimen. May I? He asked, indicating Issei's hand. Issei nodded hesitantly. Ajuka produced a complex magical instrument and held it near Issei's fingers. The device whirred, lights flashing, then went dark, just as Akino's pendant had. Extraordinary, Ajuka murmured. It negated the magic completely. Not just negated, Serafall piped up, bouncing forward to peer at Issei with unusual seriousness despite her cutesy appearance. Erased it at a fundamental level, like it was never enchanted at all. Her purple eyes studied Issei with an intensity that belied her frivolous outfit. You're very interesting, Issei-chan tilde. No wonder So-tan's been concerned about energy fluctuations in her territory. So-tan? Issei asked, momentarily confused. My darling sister Sona, Serafall clarified with a broad smile. She reported magical anomalies throughout Kuo yesterday, but we had no idea they centered around you. Serafall cleared his throat. Perhaps we should continue this discussion somewhere more private. The barrier is down, and we're exposed here. The underworld, Rias suggested. No, Ajuka countered. Until we understand this power better, moving Issei-kun through dimensional boundaries could be problematic. Serafall nodded. Agreed. We'll use my personal estate here in the human world. It's heavily warded and only a short distance away. A new transportation circle formed beneath their feet. As the magic activated, Issei felt the void energy within him stir, as if reaching out toward the teleportation magic. Instinctively, he pulled back, containing it. Serafall noticed his discomfort, feeling the void interact with the transportation magic. She asked, her voice suddenly serious and knowledgeable. When Issei looked surprised, she winked. I know more than my cute appearance suggests, Issei-chan. Before he could respond, the teleportation completed, and they found themselves in a luxurious Western-style manner. The walls were lined with books, magical artifacts displayed in glass cases, and comfortable furniture arranged for conversation. Asia immediately resumed healing the injured, while servants appeared with refreshments. Issei sank gratefully into a chair, exhaustion catching up with him now that the immediate danger had passed. First, Serafall said once everyone was settled, Ajuka will examine Issei-kun to better understand what we're dealing with. The green-haired Mao nodded. I'll need your cooperation, Issei-kun. Some tests might be uncomfortable, but none should be painful. Will they be safe? Rias asked, protective concern evident. Given how his power reacts with magic. As safe as possible, Ajuka replied honestly. But I won't lie, we're in uncharted territory. Issei straightened in his chair. I'll do whatever helps figure this out. For the next hour, Ajuka conducted various tests. Magical scans that failed when they touched the void energy. Physical examinations that revealed nothing unusual, and psychological questions about what Issei experienced when using the power. Throughout it all, Serafall watched with unexpected intensity, occasionally asking pointed questions that suggested far more knowledge than she initially let on. Finally, Ajuka stepped back. Initial findings are concerning. What do you mean? Rias asked. The power manifesting in Issei-kun appears to be primordial in nature, predating the system created by the biblical god and possibly creation itself. Serafall frowned. How is that possible? Issei-kun was human until recently. Human, yes, but also the Red Dragon Emperor, Ajuka pointed out. Dragons themselves are primordial beings, among the first creatures to exist. It's possible that combination created a resonance of sorts. Actually, Serafall interjected, twirling a lock of hair around her finger, I have another theory. All eyes turned to her. Despite her childish mannerisms, she was one of the 4 strongest devils in existence and possessed knowledge many had forgotten. The void existed before anything else, she explained, suddenly professorial. Not empty space, but true nothingness, the absence of everything, even potential. When creation began, that nothingness was pushed back but never destroyed. It couldn't be, by definition. She hopped up and paced. Magical girl outfit swishing. What if traces of that primordial nothingness sometimes manifest in living beings? Not often. Maybe once in countless millennia. And you think Issei is such a manifestation? Rias asked. Not exactly. Serafall stopped before Issei, studying him intently. I think he's a vessel. The void can't exist within creation without a container of sorts. Why me? Issei asked. The question that had burned in him all day. Serafall's playful demeanor softened. Why does any power choose its wielder? Sometimes there's no reason beyond cosmic coincidence. Or, Ajuka countered, there's a very specific reason we don't yet understand. Searzex cleared his throat. Regardless of why, we need to decide what to do now. Kokabil's attack proves others are already aware of this development. Quote, we need to protect Issei, Rias stated firmly. And train him, Serafall added. Untamed void power is dangerous to everything, including its wielder. Ajuka nodded agreement. I can design a training regimen, but someone with knowledge of primordial energies should oversee it. All eyes turned to Serafall, who beamed. Me, well, if you insist Tilda. I'd be happy to teach Issei-chan to control his exciting new powers. Despite her frivolous tone, her eyes held ancient knowledge and seriousness that reassured Issei. Behind the magical girl persona was a being of immense power and wisdom. It's settled then, Searzex decided. Issei-kun will remain under Rias's care but receive training from Serafall. Ajuka will continue research into the nature of this power. I'll handle the political ramifications with other factions. He looked at Issei directly. This won't be easy. Powers like this attract attention, both those who fear it and those who wish to control it. The Null Conclave, whoever they are, clearly have plans for you. Kokabil's interest suggests the fallen angels have their own agenda. Issei nodded, determination settling over him. I understand. I'll work hard to control this power. And we'll be with you every step, Rias added, her peerage nodding in agreement. As the discussion continued into practicalities, Issei noticed Serafall watching him with that same intense curiosity. When their eyes met, she smiled. Not her usual exaggerated grin, but something more genuine. You'll be okay, Issei-chan, she said quietly, only for him to hear. The void isn't inherently destructive, despite how it seems. Nothing is also potential, the canvas upon which everything can be painted. Her words resonated strangely, as if speaking to something deep within him. For a moment, the cold energy inside him stirred in recognition. Later, as evening fell and plans were finalized, Issei found himself alone on a balcony overlooking manicured grounds. The events of the day swirled in his mind. Missing alarm clocks, Null Conclave attackers, erased fallen angels, and powers older than creation itself. Mind if I join you? Rias asked, stepping onto the balcony. Please. She leaned against the railing beside him, their shoulders almost touching. For a moment, they simply watched the sunset in companionable silence. Scared, she finally asked. Terrified, he admitted, not just of what this power might do, but what it means. Who am I if not just a devil in your peerage? What does having the power of nothingness make me? Rias turned to face him fully. It doesn't change who you are, Issei. It only adds to what you can do. I erased people from existence today, he said quietly. Not killed, erased. How do I live with that? She took his hand, the one that had channeled void energy, and held it firmly between both of hers. The same way you've faced everything else. With courage, compassion, and your friends beside you. Her touch was warm against the lingering cold of the void. Issei looked into her blue-green eyes and found unwavering faith there. Thank you, he whispered. For what? For still seeing me, not the void wielder or whatever I'm becoming, but me. She smiled, a soft expression he rarely saw, vulnerable, genuine, without the polished composure of the Gremory air. I will always see you, Issei. No matter what power you hold. The moment stretched between them, intimate and charged with unspoken feelings. For an instant, Issei thought she might kiss him, had wanted her to for so long. Instead, The balcony door opened, and Akeno appeared. "Ah, there you are. Searzax-sama is looking for you both." The moment broken, Rias stepped back. "We'll be right there." As they followed Akeno inside, Issei caught a glimpse of Serafall watching them, an unreadable expression on her normally animated face. When their eyes met, she smiled, that same genuine smile from earlier, before turning away. Issei took a deep breath, centering himself. Whatever this power was, whatever he was becoming, he wouldn't face it alone. He had Rias, his friends, and now apparently Amao as his teacher. The void within him stirred, cold and vast and ancient. But for now, at least, it was quiet. Tomorrow would bring training, research, and undoubtedly more danger. But tonight, surrounded by people who cared for him, Issei could almost believe Serafall's words, that nothingness wasn't just destruction, but also infinite potential. He just had to learn to control it before it consumed everything he loved. Chapter 1 End Chapter 2, Echoes of Primordial Power. Dawn broke over Kuo with tentative rays that seemed to hesitate before touching the earth. Issei stood in the center of a heavy, warded training field behind Searzax's estate, eyes closed, focusing on the cold sensation that had taken up residence in his chest. For 3 hours, he had been attempting the simplest exercise a Jew Ka had devised. Summon the void energy to his fingertips, hold it for 10 seconds, then release it safely. So far, he had erased 7 practice dummies, a section of stone wall, and nearly Kiba's left boot. Again, Ajuka instructed from a safe distance, his analytical eyes never leaving Issei's form. The Mao had been observing since before sunrise, recording measurements with devices of his N invention, devices that frequently stopped functioning near Issei's void energy. Issei exhaled slowly, reaching inward for the cold pulse of nothingness. Unlike boosted gear, which responded to his will and emotions, the void remained elusive, sometimes flowing freely when he least expected it, other times refusing his summons entirely. "It's not like other power," he muttered, frustration mounting. "It doesn't want to be used." Interesting choice of words, Ajuka noted. "You perceive it as having volition." "Not exactly." Issei opened his eyes, searching for words to describe the sensation. "More like, it has patterns I don't understand yet. Tides or currents." "The boy is right." Diedrag's voice resonated from the boosted gear, which Issei had manifested to see how the two powers interacted. "This void energy moves unlike any magical force I've encountered in my existence." Ajuka's eyebrows rose slightly. Even a dragon as ancient as Diedrag found the power unusual. "Try again, but this time, don't attempt to direct the energy. Simply acknowledge its presence and observe where it naturally flows." Issei nodded, closing his eyes once more. Instead of grasping for the cold energy, he simply became aware of it, a weightless, invisible presence coiled at his core. As he focused, he sensed subtle movements, like currents in a dark ocean. The void stirred, responding to his awareness. Cold flowed up his left arm, not the arm bearing boosted gear, but his ordinary human limb. Tendrils of absolute darkness began to wisp from his fingertips. "Good," Ajuka encouraged quietly. "Now hold that state. Don't direct it, don't suppress it, just maintain awareness." The darkness thickened, trailing from Issei's fingers like ink in water. Where it touched the ground, perfect circular holes appeared, extending downward beyond sight. The sensation was neither pleasant nor painful, simply a profound absence, as if that part of him had ceased to exist while simultaneously expanding infinitely. 10 seconds. Ajuka counted softly. 9, 8. The void energy pulsed suddenly, expanding outward. A nearby monitoring device disappeared with a sound like air rushing to fill a vacuum. 7, 6. The energy was growing difficult to contain, pressing against Issei's awareness like a living thing seeking escape. 5, 4. Sweat beaded on his forehead as he fought to maintain the delicate balance, neither directing nor suppressing, simply observing. 3, 2. Something shifted in the energy's flow, a subtle change in pressure. Issei felt a momentary connection, a fleeting understanding of its nature. 1. Now release it, gradually. Instead of cutting off the flow abruptly as he had before, Issei visualized the void energy slowly receding, like a tide returning to sea. The darkness around his fingers thinned, wisping away until only ordinary skin remained. Issei opened his eyes, a tentative smile forming. I did it. Ajuka nodded, satisfaction evident despite his reserved demeanor. Better. You're beginning to sense the natural patterns of the energy rather than imposing your will upon it. It felt different that time, Issei said, flexing his fingers. Less like fighting against it. Progress, though minimal. Ajuka made notes in a journal, paper rather than magical, given how the void energy affected his instruments. We need Serafall's expertise. Primordial energies are beyond even my understanding. As if summoned by her name, a transportation circle appeared several meters away, glowing with the distinctive magical signature of the Leviathan household. From it emerged Serafall, though not in her usual magical girl attire. Instead, she wore a form-fitting black and blue training outfit, her long hair tied back in a practical ponytail. Good morning, students Tilda, she called cheerfully, waving as she approached. Despite her casual demeanor, her eyes, ancient and knowing, assessed Issei with scientific precision. Serafall, Ajuka greeted with a nod. Your timing is excellent. We've made limited progress. I felt the void fluctuations from the underworld, she explained, her voice taking on a more serious tone. Like ripples in still water. Quote, she circled Issei, studying him from all angles. You've been trying to control it directly, haven't you? Is that wrong? Issei asked. Serafall stopped before him, violet eyes meeting his. Imagine trying to hold water by squeezing it in your fist. The tighter you grip, the more escapes between your fingers. She demonstrated, mimicking the action. But cup your hands gently. She changed her gesture to an open, receiving position. And it rests there, contained but not constrained. The analogy resonated with what Issei had just experienced. Quote, that's what happened when I stopped trying to direct it. Exactly. Serafall clapped her hands together, momentarily reverting to her more playful persona before growing serious again. The void isn't energy in the conventional sense. It's the absence of energy, of everything. You can't command nothingness the way you command the dragon's power. Ajuka watched this exchange with interest. Your understanding of primordial forces continues to impress, Serafall. She winked at him. I'm not just a pretty face in a magical girl costume, Ajuka-chan. Turning back to Issei, she adopted a more instructional tone. Before we continue training, I need to understand your experience of the void. Describe it to me, not the power itself, but your perception of it. Issei considered, searching for words. Cold, but not painful. Empty, but not hollow. Like there's infinite potential in the emptiness. He frowned, frustrated by the inadequacy of language. It feels ancient, patient, like it's been waiting. Waiting for what? Serafall pressed. For me, I think. Or someone like me. The words came without conscious thought, surprising even Issei. Serafall and Ajuka exchanged a significant look. The Null Conclave called me the Void Inheritor, Issei continued. What does that mean exactly? Legends speak of individuals throughout history who manifested primordial energies, Serafall explained. Most were driven mad by powers they couldn't comprehend. Some became conduits for forces beyond their control. That's not reassuring, Issei muttered. Serafall smiled sympathetically. The fact that you've maintained your sanity and personality suggests you're different. The void isn't consuming you, it's accepting you as its vessel. Why me, though? It was the question that had haunted him since yesterday. I was just an ordinary human before becoming a devil. Ordinary. Ajuka raised an eyebrow. You possess one of the 13 Longinus class sacred gears. You were never ordinary, Issei-kun. There's a theory, Serafall added, that certain souls resonate with primordial energies. The presence of the Welsh dragon within you might have created the perfect conditions for the void to manifest. She may be right, partner, Diedrag interjected. Dragons exist in opposition to nothingness. We are beings of immense magical energy and presence. Perhaps that opposition created a balance that allowed you to channel the void without being consumed by it. A symbiotic relationship, Ajuka mused, between diametrically opposed forces. Serafall clapped her hands decisively. Enough theory. Let's see what you can do, Issei-chan. But first, she spun in place, magical energy swirling around her as she created an enhanced barrier around the training ground. Safety precautions. The barrier shimmered into place, far more complex than anything Issei had seen before, layers upon layers of protective magic, reinforcement spells, and containment fields. Now, she said, facing him with a more serious expression than her usual playful demeanor, show me the void. For the next 2 hours, Serafall guided Issei through increasingly complex exercises, her approach radically different from Ajuka's scientific methodology. Where he had focused on measurement and control, she emphasized intuition and harmony. She instructed Issei to visualize the void not as a weapon or tool, but as an aspect of himself, neither separate nor dominant, but integrated. Feel its currents, she said, circling him as darkness wisped from his extended hand. Don't resist them, don't direct them, dance with them. The metaphor helped. Issei began to sense patterns in the void's movements, subtle rhythms he could anticipate rather than control. With each attempt, the manifestation became more stable, the cold energy responding more predictably to his awareness. Excellent. Serafall beamed when he managed to maintain a controlled void manifestation for nearly a minute. Now, let's try something more challenging. Manifest your sacred gear simultaneously. Issei hesitated. When I tried that yesterday, the void energy interfered with boosted gear. Exactly, she nodded. We need to understand that interference. Knowledge of limitations is as important as knowledge of capabilities. With a deep breath, Issei summoned boosted gear while maintaining the void manifestation in his other hand. Immediately, he felt the two powers clash, not violently, but like magnets repelling each other. The red gauntlet flickered, its emerald jewel dimming. This is uncomfortable, Didraig commented. His voice noticeably strained. The void suppresses draconic energy. Interesting, Serafall murmured, observing the interaction. Try boosting while maintaining the void. Boost, the gauntlet announced. Though the usual surge of power felt muted, the void energy responded by pulsing outward, as if attempting to negate the increase in draconic power. Their opposing forces, Issei realized, struggling to maintain both simultaneously. Like Serafall Sama said, dragons exist in opposition to nothingness, which presents both a challenge and an opportunity, she replied. The challenge is obvious, using both powers simultaneously will be difficult. But the opportunity, balance, Ajuka finished for her. If you can harmonize these opposing forces, the potential applications would be extraordinary. Before Issei could respond, a familiar voice called from beyond the barrier. Issei, are you still training? Rias approached, dressed casually in jeans and a sweater rather than her usual school uniform. Behind her followed the rest of her peerage, each carrying various supplies for what appeared to be a training session of their own. Serafall dispelled a section of the barrier to allow them entry. Rias-chan, coming to check on your precious pawn. Something in her tone, a slight emphasis on your, carried a subtly possessive undertone that Issei didn't miss. Rias apparently didn't miss it either, her smile remaining polite but her eyes narrowing slightly. Good morning, Serafall Sama. Oni-sama suggested we continue our regular training regimen alongside Issei's special instruction. Excellent idea. Serafall clapped her hands. Training together builds team cohesion. And I'd love to see how Issei-chan works with his friends. The rest of the peerage greeted Issei with varying degrees of concern and curiosity. Asia immediately checked him for injuries, her healing sacred gear at the ready. Kiba regarded the void energy still w-I-sping from Issei's fingers with wary fascination. Kaneko maintained her usual stoic expression, though her nose wrinkled slightly as if the void carried an unpleasant scent. Akano observed with analytical interest, while Zenobia seemed eager to test her combat skills against this new power. Gasper hung back, crimson eyes wide with a mixture of fear and fascination. How's it going? Kiba asked, keeping a prudent distance from the darkness trailing from Issei's hand. Better, Issei replied, allowing the void energy to recede completely. I'm starting to understand it. Sort of. He's a quick learner, Serafall added, placing a hand on Issei's shoulder with casual familiarity. The void responds to him naturally. Rias's eyes flickered to Serafall's hand, then back to her face. I'm not surprised. Issei has always adapted quickly to new challenges. The pride in her voice was unmistakable, as was the subtle reclaiming of knowledge about him. Issei found himself caught between their interaction, simultaneously flattered and uncomfortable. Ajuka, either oblivious to or deliberately ignoring the tension, addressed the entire group. Since you're all here, perhaps we can incorporate 8 Issei-kun's training with team exercises. It would be valuable to understand how the void energy interacts with different types of magic and abilities. An excellent suggestion, Rias agreed, professional demeanor replacing any hint of territorial behavior. We should all understand the capabilities and limitations of Issei's new power if we're to fight effectively alongside him. The training field was rearranged to accommodate multiple exercises. Under Ajuka's scientific observation and Serafall's experienced guidance, each member of Rias's peerage took turns testing their abilities against or in conjunction with Issei's void manifestation. Kiba went first, attempting to create demonic swords near the void energy. The results were inconsistent. Some blades formed normally, others appeared warped or incomplete. As if the void interfered with the creation process. The void energy seems to disrupt manifestation magic to varying degrees, Ajuka noted, recording observations in his journal. Fascinating. Akino's lightning magic proved particularly vulnerable to the void's influence. When she directed lightning toward a training dummy near Issei's void manifestation, the LCTRI city simply vanished upon contact with the dark tendrils. It's like it never existed, she remarked, violet eyes wide with scientific curiosity despite the disturbing implications. Not absorbed or deflected, erased. Kaniko's physical strength appeared unaffected when she herself was near the void energy, but when she attempted to lift objects partially touched by the darkness, they crumbled into nothingness. Zenovia's holy sword Durandal reacted violently, its holy aura flaring defensively when brought near the void. It resists, she observed, struggling to maintain her grip on the hilt. Like it recognizes an ancient enemy. Gasper's time-stopping ability yielded the most surprising results. When he froze time for objects touched by the void energy, the affected areas continued to move and spread. Unbound by temporal constraints, time itself is a creation, Serafall explained, watching with scholarly interest. The void predates time, so it exists independent of temporal laws. Asia's twilight healing produced perhaps the most concerning outcome. When she attempted to heal a small cut Issei had received during training, her sacred gear's green light flickered and dimmed. Near the void energy still present in his system. I can't heal you properly while that power is active, she said, worry creasing her gentle features. It's like the healing energy has nothing to attach to. Which means, Rias concluded with obvious concern, that injuries sustained while using void powers might be difficult or impossible to heal. A significant vulnerability, Ajuka agreed. You'll need to be especially cautious in combat situations, Issei-kun. The implications settled heavily on Issei. Each test revealed new complications, new dangers associated with his awakening power. The cold energy within him no longer seemed merely strange, but potentially catastrophic. Serafall, sensing his growing apprehension, placed a reassuring hand on his arm. Every power has limitations, Issei-chan. Learning them is part of mastery. But most powers don't erase people from existence or prevent healing, he pointed out. True, she conceded, which is why your training is so important. The void isn't inherently evil or destructive, it simply is. Your intent shapes its manifestation. Rias approached from his other side. We'll adapt our strategy accordingly. Issei won't face combat situations alone. The two powerful women flanked him, both offering support in their own ways. Serafall with her ancient knowledge, Rias with her unwavering loyalty. Despite the gravity of the situation, Issei couldn't help but feel a spark of warmth at their concern. Let's try one more exercise, Ajuka suggested. Issei-kun, attempt to manifest the void in a specific shape rather than as ambient energy. Like what? Quote, start with something simple, a sphere, perhaps. Issei extended his hand, concentrating on the void energy flowing through him. Rather than allowing it to wisp freely, he visualized it coalescing into a perfect sphere. The darkness responded sluggishly at first, swirling chaotically before gradually forming the requested shape. Good, Serafall encouraged. Now maintain it while slowly expanding its size. The void sphere grew from marble-sized to baseball-sized under Issei's careful concentration. Unlike previous manifestations, this controlled shape felt more stable, less likely to expand unpredictably. Now for the challenging part, Serafall continued. Try to hollow it out. create a shell of void energy with empty space inside. Issei frowned in concentration. The concept seemed contradictory, emptiness within emptiness. Nevertheless, he attempted to reshape the sphere, thinning its center while maintaining the outer structure. As he focused, something unexpected happened. The sphere didn't merely hollow out, it expanded inward, creating what appeared to be a spatial distortion. The center of the sphere darkened beyond blackness, becoming a window into what seemed like infinite space. "What's happening?" Issei asked, alarmed but maintaining his concentration. Ajuka leaned forward, fascination overriding caution. "You're creating a pocket dimension, a space between spaces. A void bubble," Serafall clarified, excitement raising her voice. "A fragment of the primordial nothingness that existed before creation." The sphere continued to expand inward, the gateway growing larger while its external size remained constant, a physical impossibility that nonetheless occurred before their eyes. "Can you look into it?" Ajuka asked. "What do you see?" Issei peered into the darkness. At first, it appeared to be simply absence, a perfect black that absorbed all light. But as he focused, he began to discern subtle variations, patterns in the nothingness. "It's not empty," he said, surprised. "Not completely. There's something there. Structure, but not physical." "The void between realms," Serafall whispered, reverence and excitement mingling in her voice. "The primordial space that exists outside created reality." Rias stepped closer, concern evident. "Is it safe?" "Theoretically," Ajuka replied, which did nothing to alleviate her worry. "I want to see more," Issei decided. Acting on instinct, he expanded the portal further until it was large enough to potentially step through. "Issei." "Wait," Rias began, but Serafall interrupted. "Let him explore. This connection is natural for a void wielder." Before the argument could continue, the decision was made for them. The portal pulsed, its edges rippling like disturbed water, and suddenly expanded outward in all directions. In an instant, it engulfed Issei entirely and, due to their proximity, Rias and Serafall as well. The others cried out in alarm as the three vanished, the portal collapsing behind them with an audible snap, like reality sealing a breach. Darkness. Complete, absolute darkness surrounded them, not the absence of light, but the sense of everything that light could illuminate. Issei felt weightless, bodiless, as if his physical form had dissolved into the nothingness. Panic threatened to overwhelm him until he heard Rias's voice. Somehow both distant and immediate. "Issei. Where are you?" "I'm here," he responded, though, "here," had no meaning in this place. "Serafall Sama, present tilde." Her voice maintained its cheerful lilt despite the circumstances. "And quite fascinated. Do you realize what you've done, Issei-chan? Transported us somewhere dangerous." He guessed. "Transported us to the void between realms," she corrected. "A space that theoretically shouldn't be accessible to created beings. Very few in recorded history have glimpsed it, let alone entered it." "How do we get back?" Rias asked, practical concerns overriding academic interest. "Issei brought us here," Serafall replied. "He should be able to return us." "Should be able to," Rias echoed, alarm evident. "I'll figure it out," Issei assured her, though confidence eluded him. "Can we move in this place?" "Intention substitutes for physical action here," Serafall explained. "Think of movement, and it happens." Issei focused on the concept of forward motion. Immediately, he sensed a change. Not physical movement through space, but a shift in perspective, as if reality reoriented around him. "I think I'm getting the hang of it," he said. "Let's try to stay together." "Agreed," both women replied in unison. As they moved through the void, Issei gradually became aware of faint structures in the nothingness, not physical objects, but disturbances in the fabric of the void itself. They appeared as subtle variations in the darkness, like the patterns one might see with eyes closed in a pitch-black room. "Do you see that?" he asked his companions. "See what?" Rias responded. "The patterns. Like architecture made of absence." "I see nothing but darkness," Rias admitted. Serafall's voice came thoughtfully. "I perceive something. Vague impressions. But you seem to see more clearly, Issei-chan." He moved toward one of the structures, a massive columnar formation that somehow existed despite having no physical substance. As he approached, details became clearer. The column was one of many supporting what appeared to be a vast, impossible structure, a temple or palace built from nothingness itself. "There's a building here," he described for his companions. "Enormous, ancient beyond imagination, a creation within the void." Serafall sounded both skeptical and intrigued. "That shouldn't be possible. Not a creation," Issei realized as understanding dawned instinctively. "An uncreation. Something that exists by virtue of not existing." The paradoxical concept made perfect sense here, in this place beyond conventional reality. Issei reached out, not with a physical hand, but with intention, and touched the structure. Instantly, knowledge flooded his consciousness, not in words or images, but in pure understanding. This place had existed before time began, before the concept of existence itself had meaning. The structures were remnants of something that had dwelled in nothingness before creation displaced it. "We need to go back," Issei said suddenly, an urgency he couldn't fully explain gripping him. "Now, what did you see?" Serafall asked, curiosity evident. "Not now. Just trust me." Focusing on the concept of return, Issei visualized the training field, their bodies, the reality they had left behind. The void resisted briefly, as if reluctant to release him, but then yielded to his will. Reality reasserted itself with jarring abruptness. One moment they existed in formless void, the next, they stood on solid ground, gravity and physical sensation returning with almost painful intensity. The transition left all three momentarily disoriented. "Bushu, Serafall Sama, Issei Senpai," Gasper cried, the first to spot their return. The others rushed forward, relief evident on their faces. "What happened?" Ajuka demanded, his scientific curiosity temporarily overridden by concern. "You vanished completely. No magical trace, no dimensional ripple." Issei created a portal to the void between realms. Serafall explained, her voice uncharacteristically subdued. "We visited." "That's impossible," Ajuka stated flatly. "The primordial void isn't a physical location one can travel to." "And yet, we did," Rias countered, steadying herself against Akeno, who hovered protectively near her master. Issei remained silent, processing what he had experienced, he had learned in that momentary connection with the void structure. Ancient knowledge lingered at the edges of his consciousness, too vast and alien to fully comprehend. "Issei," Asia approached tentatively, concern evident in her gentle features. "Are you all right?" Her voice anchored him to the present. "I'm okay. Just processing." "What did you see there?" Ajuka pressed, scholarly int. Rest returning now that immediate concerns for their safety were alleviated. Before Issei could attempt to articulate the inexplicable, a new presence made itself known. The air above the training field shimmered. Displacing as a massive translucent form descended from the sky, a dragon, azure scales gleaming with iridescent beauty, eyes ancient and knowing. "Dragon," Zenobia shouted, instinctively reaching for Durandal. "Not just any dragon," Kiba corrected, recognition dawning. "That's Tiamat," Rias finished, tension evident in her voice. "The Chaos Karma Dragon, one of the 5 dragon kings." The massive dragon regarded them with piercing intelligence, her focus settling on Issei. When she spoke, her voice resonated with power that made the air itself vibrate. "So," she rumbled, "it's true. The void stirs once more in the world of creation." "Tiamat," Didrag acknowledged from the boosted gear. "What brings you from your territory?" The dragon's eyes narrowed at Didrag's voice. "You know perfectly well what brings me, Red One. The disturbance in dragon magic resonates throughout the world. The void has chosen a vessel, and of all possibilities, it chose yours." She circled lower, her enormous form dwarfing the training field despite her partially ethereal manifestation. "I come to assess the threat." "Threat?" Serafall stepped forward, her playful demeanor replaced by the authority of a Satan. "The void wielder is under devil protection, Tiamat. He poses no immediate danger." Tiamat's laughter shook the ground. "No immediate danger. Foolish devil. The primordial void exists in opposition to all creation. Its very nature is erasure." Her massive head lowered until one enormous eye was level with Issei. "I sense the awakening power within you, human turned devil. The question is, will you control it, or will it control you?" The directness of her question cut through the diplomatic niceties. Issei met her gaze steadily. "I'm learning to control it." "Learning?" She repeated, skepticism evident. While it devours you from within. My partner is stronger than you give him credit for, Tiamat, Deidraig defended. Your partner, she scoffed. First you dwell within a human, then a devil. And now a void vessel. How far the mighty Welsh dragon has fallen. Issei felt Deidraig's anger surge through their connection. Before the dragon could respond something that might worsen the situation, Issei spoke. I understand your concern, he addressed Tiamat directly. This power is dangerous. That's why I'm training to control it, to ensure it doesn't threaten creation. Tiamat studied him, her ancient eyes inscrutable. Pretty words, but I saw what happened moments ago. You opened a doorway to the void between realms. Do you comprehend the danger of such actions? No, Issei admitted honestly, not fully, but I'm trying to learn. His candor seemed to surprise the dragon. She regarded him thoughtfully, then shifted her attention to Serafall. Leviathan, you claim to understand primordial energies. What makes you believe this fledgling can master power that predates the gods themselves? Serafall met the dragon's gaze unflinchingly. Because the void chose him, Tiamat. Not randomly, not accidentally. I believe there's purpose in that choice. Purpose. Tiamat's laugh was softer this time, but no less sardonic. The void has no purpose beyond unmaking. It is the antithesis of existence. Yet it exists within creation, Serafall countered. A paradox that suggests complexity beyond simple opposition. Their philosophical debate might have continued. But Issei suddenly staggered, a wave of cold energy surging through him without warning. Darkness began to wisp from his entire body, not just his hands. Issei. Rias moved toward him, but Ajuka held her back. Don't touch him, the Mao warned. The void energy is destabilizing. Tiamat's eyes narrowed. As I suspected, he cannot contain it. I can. Issei gritted through clenched teeth. Fighting to regain control. The cold sensation had become painful, like ice forming in his veins. Just need to. He closed his eyes, focusing on the techniques Seraph all had taught him earlier, not struggling against the energy, but harmonizing with it. Gradually, the pain subsided, the darkness receding back beneath his skin. When he opened his eyes, he found Eve Rion watching him with varying degrees of concern and wariness. Only Serafall looked pleased. You see, she told Tiamat triumphantly. He regained control. This time, the dragon conceded reluctantly. But each manifestation will grow stronger as the void awakens further within him. She addressed Issei directly once more. Heed me, void vessel. Dragons and nothingness have been opposed since the dawn of creation. Your dual nature as Deidraig's host and void inheritor creates an instability that cannot last indefinitely. Eventually, you must choose. Choose what? Issei asked. Which power defines you? Tiamat's voice softened marginally. I do not envy your position, young one. Few beings could withstand the conflict raging within you. With that ominous statement, she began to ascend. I will be watching. Should the void threaten to consume you entirely, I will not hesitate to end the danger you pose, regardless of who stands in my way. The threat, delivered calmly and with absolute conviction, hung in the air as Tiamat disappeared into the clouds. Silence fell over the training field as her presence faded. Finally, Kiba spoke what everyone was thinking. That could have gone better. But not unexpected, Ajuka noted. Dragons would naturally be most sensitive to void energy, given their nature as beings of immense magical presence. Rias turned to Issei, concern evident. Are you all right? That surge seemed painful. I'm fine now, he assured her, though the lingering coldness in his chest suggested otherwise. Just lost control for a moment. Which is why training must continue. Serafall interjected. Tiamat isn't wrong about the stakes, just about your capabilities. She placed a hand on Issei's shoulder, her touch warm against the residual cold of the void energy. I believe you can master this, Issei-chan. What happened in the void between realms, what you saw there, confirms it. What did you see? Asia asked quietly. Issei hesitated, uggling to translate his experience into words. Structures. Architecture made of nothingness. And when I touched one, I felt knowledge. Ancient understanding that doesn't fit into human or devil concepts. Remnants. Serafall nodded, as if this confirmed a theory. Echoes of what existed before creation. Did this knowledge tell you anything useful? Ajuka inquired. Anything that might help control the void energy. Not directly, Issei admitted. It was more like context. Background. I understood that the void isn't just emptiness, it's a state that existed before fullness had meaning. He frowned, frustration evident. I'm not explaining it well. On the contrary, Serafall said, you're articulating concepts that philosophers and theologians have struggled with for millennia. The nature of pre-creation is fundamentally incomprehensible to created beings. Except, apparently, to you, Rias observed, studying Issei with a mixture of concern and pride. Before the conversation could continue, a disturbance at the edge of the training field drew everyone's attention. The air rippled, folding in on itself to form a dimensional tear similar to the one created by the Null Conclave attackers the previous day. Defensive positions. Rias commanded instantly, her peerage moving with practiced coordination. Ajuka and Serafall stepped forward, their power manifesting as intense magical auras that distorted the air around them. Issei summoned boosted gear, the familiar weight of the gauntlet reassuring despite Tiamat's warnings about his dual nature. Boost, Didrag announced, power flowing through the sacred gear. Through the dimensional tear stepped 5 figures in the now familiar black robes adorned with silver symbols. Unlike the previous attackers, these moved with military precision, spreading out in a practiced formation. Their leader pulled back his hood, revealing a middle-aged man with a face that would have been unremarkable except for eyes had reflected no light, the same unnerving characteristic the woman had displayed yesterday. Void Inheritor, he called, voice carrying across the field. The Null Conclave extends an invitation. Come willingly, and no harm will befall your companions. Bold of you to make demands while facing Tumao, Serafall replied, her usually cheerful voice edged with deadly seriousness. The man inclined his head slightly in acknowledgement. Even Satan lords must respect the primordial forces. We do not wish conflict, merely conversation with the Inheritor. Then speak here, Issei called back. I'm not going anywhere. Disappointment crossed the man's features. Unwise. The knowledge you need cannot be shared in open spaces. The void has secrets meant only for its vessels. Secrets like what? Issei pressed, curious despite his wariness. Like the true nature of your awakening. Like the reason the void chose you, specifically. Like the coming convergence that threatens all creation. His words struck a chord with the fragments of knowledge Issei had glimpsed in the void between realms. Something was coming. Something significant involving the primordial forces. Don't engage with them, Issei, Rias warned quietly. They're trying to manipulate you. With truth, the man countered, his hearing apparently far more acute than his human appearance suggested. The devil fears what she cannot control, cannot understand. But you felt it in the void, didn't you, Inheritor? The stirring, the awakening, not just within you, but throughout creation. Serafall's eyes narrowed. How do you know he visited the void between realms? The man smiled thinly. We have existed since before recorded history, Leviathan. Our purpose is to monitor the void and its manifestations. We know when its boundaries are crossed. What is this convergence you mentioned? Ajuka inquired, scientific curiosity momentarily overriding caution. Instead of answering directly, the man reached in to his robe and withdrew a small object, a cube of absolute darkness that seemed to absorb light around it. A demonstration, he said, of what approaches. He tossed the cube toward the center of the field. Before anyone could react, it expanded explosively, darkness billowing outward like smoke but thicker, more substantial. Within seconds, it had formed a perfect dome of void energy 50 meters in diameter. Barrier, Ajuka shouted, he and Serafall simultaneously creating protective shields around their group. The darkness washed over their barriers like water, seeking entry through any weakness. Where it touched bare ground, matter simply ceased to exist, leaving perfectly smooth hemispherical depressions. Partner, this void energy is different from yours, Didrag observed tensely. More concentrated, more directed. Issei felt it too, a resonance between the energy within him and the manufactured darkness surrounding them. But where his void energy felt natural, if alien, this manifestation seemed artificial. Forced, acting on instinct, Issei stepped forward and extended his hand toward the encroaching darkness. The void energy within him responded immediately, flowing outward to meet the external threat. Where the two forces met, a curious neutralization occurred, not cancellation, but absorption, his natural void energy consuming the artificial manifestation. He counters it. One of the robed figures observed with evident surprise. Impossible. Not impossible, their leader corrected, watching with clinical interest. Confirmation. Issei continued drawing the artificial void energy into himself, a process that should have been dangerous but felt oddly right, like reclaiming something that belonged to him. Within minutes, the entire manufactured dome had been absorbed, leaving only the scarred landscape as evidence of its existence. The cold energy within Issei pulsed stronger now, but paradoxically more stable, as if the absorption had somehow balanced its internal patterns. You see, the leader addressed his followers. He is indeed the true inheritor. To Issei, he called. That was but a fraction of what comes. The convergence approach. A thinning of barriers between creation and the void. Without proper preparation, without complete understanding of your awakening power, you cannot hope to stand against it. So help me understand, Issei challenged. Here and now, the man shook his head. Some knowledge can only be imparted in sacred spaces, protected from the interference of creation's agents. He gestured toward the devils surrounding Issei. They mean well, but their very nature opposes the void. Their presence distorts its patterns. Enough riddles, Rias interrupted, stepping forward with crimson destruction magic swirling around her hands. You attacked us yesterday and trespass again today. State your true purpose or leave. The leader regarded her with something approaching pity. Our purpose has remained unchanged for millennia. Devil Princess, we serve the balance between existence and non-existence. The void shaped your inheritor for a reason he must discover away from your influence. I think I've heard enough. Serafall declared, her magical energy intensifying. You're leaving now, voluntarily or otherwise. The man sighed, genuine regret crossing his features. Violence is unnecessary. We withdraw, for now. He turned to Issei one last time. When you wish to learn the full truth, and you will, seek the place where nothing touches everything. The void will guide you. With those cryptic words, he signaled to his companions. Another dimensional tear opened behind them, and they retreated through it one by one. As the tear sealed itself, Serafall turned to Issei. Don't even think about seeking them out. I wasn't planning to, he assured her, though curiosity nagged at him. But they seem to know things about this power that we don't. Dangerous knowledge, Ajuka cautioned. Cults devoted to primordial forces rarely have benevolent intentions, regardless of how they present themselves. Rias approached Issei, studying him with concern. Are you all right? That absorption you did. Actually, I feel better, he admitted. More balanced somehow, like the energy has stabilized. Ajuka produced one of his scanning devices, which surprisingly remained functional near Issei now. Fascinating. The void energy has indeed harmonized to some degree. The artificial manifestation must have provided a pattern your internal energy could align with. See, learning already, Serafall declared with forced cheerfulness, though her eyes remained troubled. But that business about a convergence concerns me. Me too, Issei agreed. It resonates with what I sensed in the void between realms, something approaching, something significant. All the more reason to accelerate your training, she decided. Starting now, for the remainder of the day, training continued with renewed intensity. The encounter with both Tiamat and the Null Conclave had underscored the urgency of Issei mastering his awakening power. Serafall proved an exacting but insightful instructor, guiding him through increasingly complex manifestations of void energy. By late afternoon, Issei could reliably create and maintain small void constructs, spheres, cubes, even rudimentary weapons like blades that erased whatever they cut rather than simply slicing through it. He could open small, controlled portals to the void between realms, though Serafall strictly forbade entering them again until they better understood the risks. Most significantly, he learned to sense void energy in his surroundings, faint traces that existed naturally throughout creation, like shadows cast by reality itself. All existence casts a void shadow, Serafall explained as they sat resting after a particularly demanding exercise. Just as light creates darkness by its very presence, so too does creation create uncreation as a necessary counterbalance. Is that what the Null Conclave meant by serving the balance? Issei asked. Serafall's expression darkened. Perhaps in origin. But cult ideologies tend to distort over time. Whatever their founders intended, I doubt today's conclave truly understands the forces they worship. Unlike you, Rias inquired, joining their conversation. He had been training her own peerage nearby, but clearly had been listening. I make no claims to complete understanding, Serafall replied with uncharacteristic humility. My knowledge comes from ancient texts and limited personal experience with primordial energies. The void is fundamentally incomprehensible to created beings, even devils as old as I am. Yet you're teaching me to control it, Issei pointed out. She smiled, briefly patting his cheek with affectionate familiarity. I'm teaching you techniques and principles. The true understanding comes from within you, Issei-chan. The void chose you as its vessel. That connection gives you insights no outsider can provide. Rias watched this interaction with a carefully neutral expression that nevertheless failed to completely hide her reaction to Serafall's casual intimacy with Issei. Speaking of insights, she interjected smoothly, Akeno has been researching ancient devil records regarding primordial powers. She may have found something relevant. Oh, Serafall's interest was immediately piqued. What kind of something? Historical accounts of previous void manifestations, Rias explained. Not identical to Issei's awakening, but potentially informative. She led them to where Akeno sat beneath a tree, surrounded by ancient tomes borrowed from the vast Gremory library. The raven-haired beauty looked up as they approached, violet eyes lighting with scholarly excitement. Serafall-sama, I found references to an event approximately 3,000 years ago, a darkness that unmade, appearing in the northern territories of the underworld. The Abyss of Zenon. Serafall nodded in recognition. I'm familiar with those accounts. Yes, but this text includes details I haven't seen elsewhere. Akeno indicated a particularly ancient volume bound in what appeared to be dragon hide. It mentions a human who controlled the darkness, called the Vessel of Nanbing, in these records. Issei leaned forward with interest. What happened to them? Akeno's expression grew somber. The account is incomplete. It says the vessel contained a breach between worlds for 7 days before. She hesitated. Before what? Rias prompted. Before being consumed by the void they wielded, Serafall finished quietly. I know the story. The vessel sacrificed themselves to seal the breach permanently. Silence fell as the implications settled over them. Issei unconsciously placed a hand over his chest, where the cold energy of the void pulsed steadily. That won't happen to Issei, Rias stated with absolute conviction. This situation is different. Hopefully, Serafall agreed, though her expression revealed concern. The circumstances of Issei's awakening are unique. No previous void wielder also hosted a dragon emperor. Which could be an advantage. Akeno suggested optimistically. The dragon power might provide balance against the void's consumption. Or accelerate it through opposition, Ajuka countered, joining their discussion. Opposing forces can either stabilize or destabilize, depending on numerous factors. Issei listened to them discuss his fate with academic detachment, a strange calm settling over him. I'm not going to be consumed, he stated quietly but with absolute certainty. They all turned to him, conversations halting. How can you be sure? Rias asked, hope evident beneath her concern. I just know, he replied simply. The void doesn't want to consume me. It chose me for a reason, and that reason isn't self-destruction. Serafall studied him intently. What makes you so certain? Issei struggled to articulate the intuitive understanding that had been growing within him since touching the structure in the void between realms. It's like, the void isn't just trying to manifest in our world. It's trying to understand it. Through me, understand creation. Ajuka's scientific curiosity was clearly piqued. For what purpose? I don't know yet, Issei admitted. But it's not destruction. At least, not entirely. His words hung in the air, neither fully reassuring nor entirely ominous. Before anyone could pursue the matter further, a communication circle appeared beside Rias. Glowing with the distinctive magic of the Seatree household. Sona Seatree's face formed within the circle, her expression characteristically serious behind red-framed glasses. Rias, we have a situation in the city. Unusual energy readings similar to yesterday's incidents, but much stronger and concentrated. The Null Conclave, Rias asked immediately. Unknown. But whatever it is, It's causing spatial distortions throughout downtown Kuo. Buildings, vehicles, even people are partially disappearing. Alarm spread through the group. Issei stepped forward. This is related to the void energy. I should investigate. We should investigate, Rias corrected firmly. Together, Serafall nodded agreement. I'll accompany you as well. If this is primordial void energy manifesting unpredictably, you'll need expertise in containing it. Preparations were made quickly. Rias's peerage gathered, ready for potential combat. Ajuka elected to remain at the estate, monitoring the situation remotely and preparing countermeasures should the disturbance spread. Be careful, he cautioned as they prepared a transportation circle. If these are natural void manifestations rather than controlled releases like the Null Conclave's demonstration, they could be highly unstable. We will, Serafall assured him, her usual playfulness replaced by the serious demeanor of a Satan at work. The transportation circle activated, carrying them to downtown Kuo. They materialized on a rooftop overlooking a scene of controlled chaos. Below, civilians evacuated under the guidance of what appeared to be government agents, though Issei recognized the subtle magical signatures that identified them as devil operatives maintaining human disguises. Throughout the business district, spatial anomalies distorted reality. Parts of buildings simply vanished, leaving perfect voids as if those sections had never been constructed. Vehicles were partially erased, the remaining portions somehow still functioning despite missing engines or wheels. Most disturbing were the people, some missing limbs or portions of their bodies, yet continuing to move without apparent awareness of their condition. It's like reality itself is coming undone, Kiba observed quietly. Not undone, Serafall corrected. Unmade. There's a difference. These aren't wounds or damages, these are absences. I felt the void energy within him respond to the disturbances below, pulsing in resonance. I can feel it. These manifestations are connected to what's inside me, but wrong somehow. Uncontrolled. Rias scanned the area, crimson hair whipping in the wind. Source. Kaneko closed her eyes, extending her senjutsu senses. Below. Underground. Beneath the central plaza. The old subway station, Akano realized. It was abandoned years ago when the new line was built. Perfect location for ritual magic, Serafall noted grimly. Underground crossroads have significance in void manipulation. Then that's where we're heading. Rias decided. Issei, stay close to me. Your void energy might provide protection against whatever we find. The group descended from the rooftop, making their way through streets increasingly affected by spatial distortions. Navigation became challenging as familiar landmarks partially vanished or relocated as reality itself became malleable. Issei found himself instinctively sensing safe passages through the distortions, the void energy within him somehow mapping the stability of space around them. This way, he directed, leading them through seemingly impassable areas that revealed safe corridors only he could perceive. Your connection to the void is growing stronger, Serafall observed as they followed his lead. You're sensing its patterns naturally now. Is that good or bad? Zenobia asked bluntly. Both, Serafall replied with equal frankness. Greater connection means greater control, but also deeper integration. They reached the entrance to the abandoned subway station, a chained gate covered with warning signs and official seals. Beyond it, darkness deeper than mere absence of light pulsed rhythmically. Whatever's happening is accelerating, Issei noted, feeling the void resonance intensifying. We need to hurry. Rias nodded to Kaneko, who effortlessly tore the gate from its moorings. They descended into the darkness. Magical lights conjured by Akano illuminating their path. The stairs seemed to stretch improbably downward, far deeper than the original architecture should have allowed. Space is distorted here, Gasper observed nervously. We're descending further than physically possible. The barriers between created space and the void are thinning, Serafall explained. Reality becomes optional. As He reached the bottom of the seemingly endless staircase, the abandoned subway platform opened before them, transformed into something unrecognizable. The entire space pulsed with darkness, architecture. Raw features appearing and disappearing with each fluctuation. In the center stood a perfect circle of robed figures, members of the Null Conclave, their arms raised in synchronized ritual. Between them, a sphere of absolute nothingness expanded and contracted like a beating heart. With each expansion, reality around it dissolved a little more. They're creating a permanent breach to the void between realms, Serafall realized. Alarm evident in her voice. If they succeed, everything in Kuo could be erased, Rias finished, understanding the implications immediately. The robed figures noticed their arrival, but didn't break their ritual. Only their leader, the same man from the earlier confrontation, acknowledged them with a slight nod before returning his attention to the pulsing sphere. We need to stop them. Heba stated the obvious, summoning a demonic sword. Wait, Issei held up a hand, studying the ritual with growing comprehension. They're not creating the breach, they're trying to contain it. Look, he pointed to the complex pattern of silver symbols glowing on the ground around the ritual circle. The design channeled the expanding void energy back into the central sphere, preventing it from spreading throughout the station and beyond. He's right, Serafall confirmed after a moment of analysis. This is a containment ritual. The breach is forming naturally, they're attempting to stabilize it. Naturally, Rias questioned. What could cause a natural breach between creation and the void? The convergence, Issei murmured, recalling the Null Conclave leader's warning. This is what he meant. The leader must have heard him, as he called out without breaking his concentration. Yes, Inheritor. The first of many breaches. The barriers thin as the void awakens. We need to help them. Issei decided, stepping forward. Their containment is failing. Indeed, with each pulse, the void sphere expanded further before the ritual forced it to contract. Each cycle less controlled than the last. Issei. Wait, Rias began, but he was already moving toward the circle, drawn by instinct and the resonating void energy within him. The Null Conclave members parted silently, creating an opening in their formation. Their leader nodded to Issei. Join us, Inheritor. This is why you awakened. Without fully understanding how he knew what to do, Issei placed himself at the edge of the circle. Directly opposite the leader, the void energy within him surged forward eagerly, connecting with the ritual pattern. Instantly, the erratic pulsing of the central sphere stabilized, its expansions becoming rhythmic and controlled. Yes, the leader encouraged. The void recognizes its vessel. Guide it, contain it. Issei extended both hands toward the sphere, allowing his internal void energy to flow outward, not to increase the breach, but to define its boundaries. Where before the edges had been ragged and unstable, they now became smooth and precise under his influence. What is he doing? Asia asked worriedly from where the others watched. Imposing order on chaos, Serafall answered, watching with fascination. Defining the limitations of the breach. The silver symbols around the circle glowed brighter as Issei's power integrated with the ritual. The sphere's pulsations slowed gradually until it hung suspended in perfect stillness, a window into absolute nothingness. But contained and stable. Now, the leader instructed, close it. Only the Inheritor can seal what primordial forces have opened. Issei instinctively understood. Unlike the Null Conclave members, who could only contain the breach, his connection to the void allowed him to communicate with it directly. He reached out not with magic or force, but with intent, a request rather than a command. The sphere responded, contracting smoothly inward until it collapsed entirely with a sound like a distant sigh. Where it had been, only empty air remained, normal, created space reclaimed from the void. As the last traces of the breach vanished, the ritual circle disbanded. Several Null Conclave members collapsed from apparent exhaustion, while others hurried to assist them. Their leader approached Issei, satisfaction evident in his otherwise unsettling eyes. You see now, he said quietly. Why we sought you, why we needed you to understand your awakening power. What was that? Issei demanded. A natural breach, you said. But what caused it? The convergence approaches, the man replied. A cyclic thinning of barriers between creation and the void that occurs once every several millennia. The last such event preceded the great war between angels, fallen angels, and devils. Serafall stepped forward, her expression grave. The cataclysm of absence. I've read the ancient accounts. Yes. The leader inclined his head respectfully. Your knowledge of primordial matters is impressive for a created being, Leviathan. But what does it have to do with Issei? Rias demanded, moving protectively to Issei's side. Why did the void awaken within him specifically? Because he was needed, the man replied simply. The void does not manifest randomly. It chooses vessels with purpose. always before periods of convergence, always with the capacity to maintain balance. He turned to Issei directly. You felt it, didn't you? The rightness of what you just did. The natural connection between your awakening power and the breach. Issei couldn't deny it. Sealing the breach had felt instinctive, almost familiar, as if he had always known how to do it. The Null Conclave has watched for signs of awakening for centuries, the leader continued. When we detected your emergence, we knew the convergence had begun. These breaches will continue, with increasing frequency and magnitude. Without your intervention, entire regions could be erased from existence. So you need Issei to clean up the mess, Hiba summarized skeptically. Convenient. Not convenient, the man corrected. Necessary. The Inheritor's awakening and the convergence are not coincidental, they are causally linked. One does not occur without the other. Serafall's eyes narrowed. Are you suggesting that Issei's awakening is causing these breaches? No more than a fever causes the infection it responds to, the leader replied. The void stirs throughout creation. The Inheritor awakens in response. To maintain balance. Before the conversation could continue, the ground trembled violently. Throughout the subway station, smaller breaches began forming spontaneously, any windows into nothingness that expanded rapidly. The primary breach is sealed, but the thinning continues in this location, the leader explained urgently. We must leave immediately. This entire station may be consumed. Everyone out, now, Rias commanded her peerage, who needed no further encouragement. As they rushed toward the stairs, reality around them became increasingly unstable. Steps appeared and disappeared, walls shifted position, and gravity itself seemed to fluctuate unpredictably. Normal movement won't work, Serafall realized. The spatial distortions are too severe. The Null Conclave leader nodded agreement. Inheritor, you must create a path through the void itself, a controlled connection between here and the surface. You want me to open another breach? Issei asked incredulously. After we just sealed one. Not a breach, a passage, the man clarified. Like what you did accidentally earlier today, creating a portal to the void between realms. But this time, with specific destination and purpose. Issei looked to Serafall for guidance. She nodded reluctantly. He's right, your connection to the void might be our only way out. But be precise, visualize exactly where we need to emerge. The station shook more violently, sections of ceiling collapsing into nothingness rather than falling. Time was running out, concentrating on the void energy within him. Issei extended both hands and focused on creating a controlled portal, not to the void between realms this time, but through it, using nothingness as a bridge between 2 points in created space. The energy responded eagerly, perhaps too eagerly. Darkness coalesced between his palms, expanding outward to form a tear in reality. Unlike his earlier accidental portal, this one remained stable, its edges smooth and defined. I can see the street above, he announced, peering through the darkness to the created reality beyond. But I don't know if it's safe to cross. The Inheritor creates, the Conclave stabilizes. The leader stated, gesturing to his remaining followers. They quickly formed a smaller circle around Issei's portal, their silver symbols glowing as they reinforced its structure. Now it will hold, the leader assured them, quickly, before this entire space is consumed. Rias hesitated only briefly before taking charge. Asia, Gasper, Kaneko, you first. The THR-EE passed through the portal without incident, disappearing into the darkness and emerging on the street above. Hiba, Zenobia, and Akano followed, then the Null Conclave members themselves. You next, Rias told Issei. But he shook his head. I need to maintain the portal. You and Serafall Sama go. We're not leaving you, Rias insisted. Together then, Serafall decided, taking position on Issei's left while Rias flanked his right. On 3. The station was now more void than matter, reality unraveling around them with increasing speed. The three stepped through the portal simultaneously, Issei maintaining his concentration on the void energy even as they transitioned through nothingness. They emerged onto the street above, where the others waited anxiously. The moment they were clear, Issei released the portal, allowing it to collapse in on itself with a soft implosion of air. Below, the abandoned subway station ceased to exist entirely, not destroyed, but erased, leaving Earth as if the excavation had never occurred. The spatial distortions throughout downtown began to stabilize, reality reasserting itself gradually. "You did it," Rias said, relieved admiration evident in her voice. "You controlled the void perfectly." "Not perfectly," Issei demurred, aware of how close they had come to disaster. "But better than before." The Null Conclave leader approached once more, his followers gathering behind him. "Now do you understand why we sought you out? Why we tried to prepare you?" Issei nodded reluctantly. "These breaches will continue, and apparently, I'm the one who needs to deal with them." Quote, "Yes, and they will grow more severe as the convergence progresses." The man gestured to the restored cityscape around them. "Today was merely the beginning, a minor thinning. What follows will test even your awakening power." "He won't face it alone," Rias stated firmly, taking Issei's hand in a gesture both supportive and possessive. "Of course not," Serafall agreed, claiming his other hand with equal determination. "We'll ensure he has every advantage in preparing for what's coming." The leader observed this dynamic with something approaching amusement. The Void Wielder rarely walks a solitary path, despite the solitary nature of their power. Companions, protectors, teachers, all have their roles to play. He bowed formally to Issei. "The Null Conclave remains at your disposal, Inheritor. When the next breach forms, and it will, soon, we will assist in its containment." With that, he signaled to his followers. A dimensional tear opened behind them, and they departed as mysteriously as they had arrived, leaving Issei and his companions to contemplate the implications of what had occurred. "Can we trust them?" Heba asked, the question on everyone's mind. "Not entirely," Serafall answered frankly. "Their devotion to the void predisposes them to value non-existence as equal to existence, a perspective that can lead to dangerous decisions. But they did help contain the breach," Akino pointed out. "Their knowledge proved useful. Knowledge we need," Issei acknowledged reluctantly. "If these breaches continue and worsen, we'll need every resource available." Rias squeezed his hand. "We'll consult with Onisama and the other Mao. This convergence affects all factions, not just devils. A summit may be necessary," Serafall agreed. "Angels, fallen angels, devils, yokai, all will experience the effects of thinning barriers." As they discussed next steps, Issei found his attention drawn to the cold energy pulsing within him. It felt different now, more integrated, more harmonized with his being. The experience of closing the breach had changed something fundamental in his relationship with the void. It no longer felt like an alien presence inhabiting him, but rather an aspect of himself he was just beginning to understand. The void had chosen him, as the Null Conclave leader said, not randomly, but with purpose. A purpose he was only starting to glimpse. Evening fell over Kuo as the group returned to Sirzek's estate to report what had transpired. The city's inhabitants, memories modified by devil magic, believed a minor earthquake had caused structural damage downtown, nothing more. In the estate's main hall, Sirzek listened gravely to their account of the breach and the Null Conclave's warnings about the convergence. "Troubling," he concluded when they finished. "If accurate, we face a potentially catastrophic situation. The timing aligns with historical records," Ajuka noted, consulting ancient texts spread before him. "The cyclic pattern of convergence between void and creation occurs roughly every 3,000 years. The last documented event coincides with the early stages of the Great War." "You think the convergence contributed to that conflict?" Rias asked, surprised. "Possibly," Sirzek acknowledged. "Heightened tensions, unusual phenomena, resources strained by containment effort. All could have exacerbated existing divisions between factions." Serafall, who had been uncharacteristically quiet during the debriefing, finally spoke. "There's another aspect we haven't discussed. The role of the Void Wielder, of Issei-chan, in all this." All eyes turned to her expectantly. Historical accounts suggest the Void awakens within a vessel not just to contain breaches, but to fulfill some greater purpose during convergence periods. Her expression was troubled. The vessel of Nanbing from 3,000 years ago didn't just seal breaches, they ultimately transformed the relationship between void and creation in ways we still don't fully understand. "Transformed how?" Issei asked, a chill that had nothing to do with void energy running down his spine. Serafall met his gaze directly. "The records are unclear. Some suggest sacrifice, others transcendence. What's consistent is that the Void Wielder's journey culminates in a choice that affects the very fabric of reality. That's unacceptably vague, Rias protested, concern evident. We can't prepare Issei for a choice we don't understand. Hence my insistence on intensive training, Serafall replied. The more Issei-chan masters his awakening power, the more likely he'll recognize the choice when it presents itself, and understand the consequences. The conversation continued late into the night, strategies proposed and debated. Historical precedents examined, and contingency plans developed. Throughout it all, Issei remained quietly reflective, processing everything he had learned and experienced. When they finally adjourned in the early hours of morning, Issei found himself on the estate's terrace, gazing at stars partially obscured by city lights. The cool night air felt refreshing against his skin, a pleasant contrast to the cold void energy within. Trouble sleeping? Rias asked, joining him at the balustrade. Just thinking, he replied. Processing. She stood beside him, close enough that their shoulders nearly touched. Today was intense. That's one word for it, he agreed with a weak smile. Yesterday I was worried about controlling this power. Now I'm apparently responsible for sealing breaches in reality itself. You're not alone in that responsibility, she reminded him gently. We'll face it together, as we've faced everything else. The conviction in her voice warmed him. Despite everything, despite the cosmic scale of what they confronted, her unwavering support remained his anchor. I know, he said softly. Thank you. They stood in companionable silence for several minutes, the distant sounds of the city creating a peaceful backdrop. May I join you? Serafall's voice came from the terrace doorway. Gone was her usual exuberance, replaced by a quiet outfulness that made her seem far older than her youthful appearance suggested. Of course, Rias replied, though Issei detected a slight tension in her voice. Serafall moved to Issei's other side, completing their tableau at the balustrade. For a moment, no one spoke, three figures contemplating the night sky from very different perspectives, a young devil heiress, an ancient Satan, and a Huma. N-turned devil now vessel for primordial nothingness. The stars look different to me now, Issei finally said. After experiencing the void, like I'm seeing the spaces between them as clearly as the light. Serafall nodded understanding. The void reveals patterns invisible to most. Creation defines itself by what it isn't as much as by what it is. Poetic, Rias observed, not unkindly. Ancient, actually, Serafall corrected with a small smile. A quote from the first documented void wielder, thousands of years before the current world order. She turned to face Issei directly. What you did today, sealing the breach, creating the portal, it came naturally to you, didn't it? Without training or instruction. Yes, he admitted, like muscle memory for something I've never actually done before. That's significant, she said thoughtfully. It suggests your connection to the void runs deeper than mere awakening. Perhaps your soul resonates with it on a fundamental level. Is that good or bad? Rias asked, echoing Zenovia's earlier question. Neither, or both. Serafall shrugged elegantly. It simply is. But it does suggest Issei-chan is uniquely suited to whatever role the void has awakened him to fulfill. The implication hung between them, that Issei was somehow destined for this, chosen by forces beyond comprehension for a purpose equally difficult to grasp. I keep thinking about what Tiamat said, Issei commented after another stretch of silence. About eventually having to choose between dragon power and void energy. Dragons and nothingness are natural opposites, Serafall acknowledged. One represents the pinnacle of magical presence, the other its complete absence. That they coexist within you at all is remarkable. But not sustainable indefinitely, Rias concluded, concern evident. Perhaps, Serafall conceded, or perhaps Issei-chan will prove exceptional in this as he has in so many other ways. Her violet eyes held Issei's gaze, something unreadable in their depths. The void chose you for a reason, Issei-chan. I believe that reason involves integration, not elimination. Integration of what? He asked. Of opposites. Of seeming contradictions. Her gaze flickered briefly to Rias, then back to him. Perhaps even of aspects of existence previously thought incompatible. Before Issei could pursue this cryptic statement, a calm unication circle appeared above the terrace, bearing the insignia of the Citri clan. Serafall's expression immediately shifted to concern. So Tan, what's wrong? Sona Citri's face formed in the magical projection. Her normally composed features tense with urgency. Oni-sama, we have a situation at Kuo Academy. Multiple breaches forming simultaneously. Reality is destabilizing throughout the campus. Already, Rias exclaimed. The convergence is accelerating faster than predicted. We'll be right there, Serafall assured her sister. Evacuate all personnel and establish a perimeter. The communication ended, leaving the three of them exchanging concerned glances. So much for rest, Issei sighed, feeling the void energy within him stirring in response to the news, as if eager to fulfill its purpose. Looks like convergence waits for no one. I'll wake the others, Rias decided, already moving toward the door. No, Serafall countered. Let them rest. This situation requires void manipulation, not combat power. The three of us should be sufficient, along with whatever Null Conclave members undoubtedly already sense the disturbance. Rias hesitated, clearly reluctant to exclude her peerage. But the logic was sound. Very well, but I'm contacting Sona for on-site details. As they prepared for immediate departure, Issei found himself strangely calm despite the urgency of the situation. The void energy within him had stabilized further during the day's events, becoming less an alien presence and more an integrated aspect of himself. Whatever awaited them at Kuo Academy, whatever challenges the convergence would bring in days to come, he would face them with growing confidence in his awakening power and the support of those who stood beside him. The void had chosen him. Now he would learn to choose how the void manifested through him. Not merely a vessel, but a wielder. Not merely an inheritor, but a shaper. The distinction felt significant as they stepped into the transportation circle, its magic carrying them toward the next test of his evolving abilities and the next chapter in his unexpected journey. Chapter 2 End. The End. I hope you enjoyed this episode. Remember to subscribe and like this video. See you in the next video.